So we're going to start core connectors in document transformation, which is used by integrations. We have done a level of document transformation in EIBs as well. If you recall, when we do an outbound EIB, we perform a document transformation by using we have the capability to put headers, footers, tags, padding, pipe delimiter, or we can change the delimiter type, and so on. Great. So similar transformation can be done with your integrations as well, but then you have much more variety or much more flexibility. And how do we apply it on integration? We'll see that in details. So let's start. So this is a different integration. It's not worker. Cannot find one which has been active and which has run successfully in the past. But this is for organizations. But process is going to be similar that we use for worker. Only difference is that this is going to be for organizations. So we were looking at how to launch an integration. So for example, if this is your integration that is concerned, these are the services that we have defined, like initiation services, date launch parameter, outbound integration configuration, data section fields, sequence generators there, integration maps are there, and document retention is there. If you look at the attributes, include prior values, yes, 90 days document retention, and then organization types and subtypes are in maps. In the subscriptions, so assign superior, create subordinate, divide organization, and organization fees are included in terms of specific transaction types. Here's a document transformation for that and the business process for it. So if you can see here, it is designed to send it to SFTP, the address, incoming demo, authentication. And it has 3 steps like initiation, file integration, and document delivery. All right, so let's try to launch this integration. We go to Actions, Integrations, and then Launch Schedule. You have options for these like run now or run once in the future, or then if you want to set up the recurrence by every minute, by every hour, daily, weekly, monthly, dependent, or custom recurrence. So let's select run now. And it has the as of entry movement. So 9:28 was the last time it ran. Sorry, this is a current movement date and time. So 9:28, 6:47 p.m. Effective date as of entry date, last successful. Say, for example, if you want to take 1 week's third, and I don't want the full extract, I just want the change files. In organizations, I don't want to specify a specific organization. I want all the organization names and the types should be pulled in. So let's run this integration. And here we can see the integration is in progress. Integration event, the system, initiated by, initiated at, the child processes, and then the details of what is going on. Here you don't see the refresh button. In some of the integrations, it would not show. So I can click on the overall process and it would refresh this integration again. So here we can see that it's still in progress. So currently it's doing the document delivery, 75% complete. It says that it failed. Okay, so it failed because of the SFTP error. So it means that it has failed to deliver on the SFTP side, but it has been able to generate a document. Here we can see that the integration step is completed, core connector. Then the part that failed was the document delivery, which I'm kind of okay with it because this localhost is a test area. But let's look at the diagnostic file. In fact, let's look at the data changes first. So here we can see that the prior entry date, the current entry date, effective from date, effective to date, and then say show all. So here you will see for all the organization like Map 20 Inc. Department, Logan McNeil, prior values were blank in the last column, but the current values are these. So supervisor organization 270, supervisory name, description, subtype, either active or inactive, who's the manager, and primary business side reference is Atlanta. And for each company, we are seeing that all the information has been provided. So if I click on these, so this is a good audit changes is a good tool to see in a browser format as to what has happened within the output of your organization, of your integration. Then we open up the diagnostic file as well. So it'll show you 562 entries, and so here you will see that changes were detected, and in some of them it is saying, like for example, belonging in diversity department, no relevant changes in our organization information static, and so the organization has not been included in the output document. Whereas for this one, it is saying changes were detected and the organization information is eligible and included in output. So this is giving you the change file details. Like when we didn't say the full file, so it is checking for the changes as per the last run and only including the areas where it has detected the change in organizations. Make sense? All right. So let's look at the actual output file as well, the org connector. And this is the actual output that is going to be received by the receiving recipient. So here we can see the schema details, the header information, then each organization information. In XML format. So once you get the hang of it, once you start reading the HTML or XML, then this gibberish becomes very, very simple and easy to use or easy to read. It may be a little difficult right now, but if you look at this, the header information, so this is the schema details on the top, which is ORGC. So it'll give you the XML information, where is the connector coming from, what are the URN, what is the schema instance, and then it'll give you the header, which has a date and time for entry, current entry time, prior effective time, prior current effective time. Is it a full file? It says false. The document retention policy and the number of records in this organization, in this run. And then you will see the organization ID, that's the name, and that's the ending tag. Organization type is supervisory, prior value, map 20 Inc., original prior value, map 20 Inc. department. So this was a prior value, and this is a new value. Then we can see the department, which is the organization subtype, then either inactive is true or false, or manager, who's the manager, and the business side references Atlanta. And then it closes the record for this particular session or this particular entry. So here in XML, you can see that when it says less than ORGC colon organization, then greater than, and here it says less than forward slash or backslash ORGC colon organization and close, it means that it's closing this tag. So this is the opening tag and this is the closing tag. So the first line ORGC organization is opening, and here it's closing this tag. So this record starts from here, goes till here. Then similarly, the next record will open. Again, opening, information for each header type, and then closing. So that's how XML or JSON works. So it's a kind of a language that most of the systems understand. and it is somewhat human readable as well. So if you spend a lot of time on this, it will start making sense to you as well as to what exactly they're saying here. So integration, organizations, run frequency. So we've provided the parameters. So as of the entry moment, effective date, last successful as of entry moment, and last successful effective date. So these combination of these four values will help you or will give you the change file. If you don't have the option for change file or change detection, then the last two sections would not show up. You can just have the as of entry moment and effective date, and it will run the full file. So change detection, where changes should be detected when a change is made in the system, and the integration is launched. Okay, let's look at the transaction log as well. Connector outbound. Uh, so here in this log file, the zip file, you can see for every organization, like this was 3000 Office of the CEO organization. And here you can see the complete details for the Workday ID, employee ID. Every transaction details will be listed here for each and every organization. Here you will see a combination of records. For example, the Supergas ERP, prior value was ERP, supervisory, Workday, a community. Let's see if we can find this here. Oh, so it has both information, current and historic. So this is Logan's organization. So let's open both. So this is the historic, and let's open the current one as well. Oh, not this one. So this is a historic information like 41600 HR services. And here we see manager was Logan McNeil, leadership was Logan McNeil, and then visibility reference was something else before. But here we see that the visibility reference has increase by a few values. It says everyone. So this part is a change here. So you can see in both of them. So if you want to audit one by one, organization by organization, so if you're doing an audit, so you have access to these files as well. And of course, the diagnostic will give you a summary of that as to which organization has had a change out of the 562 organization uh, uh, in the total organizations available within this integration. And of course, the data changes will give you a snippet of 82 organizations out of the entire organization that has actually observed the change. Here you can see them. So whenever you're going through issues or configuration problems, so a good place to start in the integration would be to start with the data changes and then going into audit. And if you still need to go further, you can go into the message, or you can, if you want to read the original connector or the output file, which has a sequence generator set up at the end, you could go through the original document as well, the output file as well. It all depends on your configurations and what you're trying to achieve and what kind of issue you're trying to resolve. So you have relevant information available for you. And here you can see that I'm not using any specific or any particular software to read the XML files or to read the audit files. Your standard browser and your Excel sheet or your Internet Explorer, you can use those standard documents or standard softwares to read these files. So even if I want to open the XSD file, and here you can see all the information about the template. So the agenda for this chapter is going to be the integration business process, integration system security, document transformation connector, and how do we set these up. So the business process for integration, every integration would have its own unique business process in which you can do the document transformation and the document delivery parameters when you're using the delivery of that document, right? Like we saw a little earlier, that the SFTP configurations for the integration that we just saw for organizations, it has its own set of parameters for delivery into a SFTP account of localhost, which actually failed, which was not working, but it has that option available for each business process. And in order for the business process to function properly, one must have the initiation, the fire integration, and if it needs the document delivery. If you don't have these set up for the integration would fail. It will not be able to do the document in integration fire or integration initiation or the document delivery. So Workday supports integration specific business processes using the integration process event. Business process type, and the business process type allows you to separate the execution of the integration itself from the act of retrieving or delivering files, and chain together several integration systems, allowing subsequent integration system to consume the integration files produced by one or more earlier integrations. So maybe your integration has multiple files that are dependent on each other, that first one needs to run, then the output is used by the second integration as an input doing the transformation, getting more data from Workday from a different instance, combining both, and so on. So if you have those chained into integration as well, you can use the business process to fire multiple integrations as well. So just to see. So this is a business process for the integration connector, core connector, outbound organization, top level. So if I look at BP integration, if I search here, I will see processes for multiple integrations that are existing in this tenant. For example, so this is for certified cloud pay UK payroll. And if I look at it, configure document, you can see that it's SFTP sending it to localhost. Another business process, which is for global modern services top level, BLS. Here we can see the initiation step, the service step, which is fire integration, and then the document delivery. And if I look at the document delivery, again, it's going to SFTP, localhost, incoming demo, and SFTP user. So the integration process event default definition is delivered with your tenant. The default integration process consists of two steps, initiation and service. So each integration will be delivered with a business process that are Workday delivered, unless you're creating your own integration. So every integration will have initiation and service. And if the default definition, initiation, and fire integrations are not present, you will be unable to create an integration process even for any integrations or launch any integration system, including EIBs. So it is critical to have a business process along with your integration in order to initiate it, fire it, and deliver document. So integration process event elements. So you have, when you run an integration, there's an initiation. If there's an approval step, for example, if you're running a payroll integration, so maybe you would like to have an approval to be given by payroll administrators every month before that payroll integration fires and sends the data to your payroll partner or your bank. So here in the business process, so here we can see that there's an approval step in this payroll integration. And all is selected, is all is yes. And when you select all, whoever is in the group that you have routed the approval to, it means that all these 8 people would need to approve, sorry, the tenant owner, Logan, Joybank, C.A. Constantine, Beth Liu, and Eva Gonzalez. These all would need to approve before it can move on to the next step, which is step E, which is configure document for delivering of your services. And let's look at this, the Beth Liu document transformation EDI. Let's have a look at that. So what it does is it calls another integration which transforms this document most probably into a readable format. Let's open that integration. and says PI output EDI. Let's look at the events. The account. Document transformation service. UTF-8 attribute value of when tag. Okay, so it is doing only tagging the documentation. It is also transforming the output to UTF-8, and it says don't include the audit validation, and saying integration documentation is 30 days. So this is the only transformation it's doing. It's not doing any customized transformation of the output. It's just setting up these output value like output tags, encoding, audit validation, and the 30 days retention policy. And then once it's approved by the payroll interface administrators, then the document is delivered after it's received approval from all of the members of the payroll interface administrator before it can proceed to delivering the documents. So that was the approval. Then if there's any to-do tasks, and run the integration and then fire the service. So configuring the integration process event. So before you can create an integration process event, your tenant must have default definitions for the integration process, event business process. So let's have a look at that. The integration process event. INTSYS. Integration process. It should be a BP, not INSYS. So it was referring to this, that you should have an integration business process, default definitions for all the integrations. So you have initiation and service. So if this default definition does not exist in your tenant, you will be unable to access the launch schedule integration for any integration system in your tenant. So this default definition process is required to be available in your tenant. If it's not, then you have to look at your domain security and function layer security, which enables or allows you to run integrations. you must have created the integration system that will use integration process, even business process. And to create a business process, use a business process copy or create or link definition related to the integration system. So if you have created a customized integration, your own integration, and you would like to assign a business process, so what you can do is you can take this default definition, can business process, and then you can create a copy or link business process definition. So you can make a copy of this basic step A, step B, initiation and fire integration, and link it to your integration system to say business object, RENT, EGRATION. Say this is the name of my integration, and I can copy the workflow to this particular business object. And then I can configure the steps of my integration for that particular business object. So core connectors and document transformation for Workday. Currently, we are running release 32. So this is from version 29, the snippet. So you can go to the integration system, create a copy or link definition, and then you'll have the step A, step B, initiation and service. And then based on your configuration parameters, you can add and configure the steps within the business process. So delivery service, you can configure the business process to deliver one or more integration files to an external location by configuring a document delivery step, which describes the file selection, transport, and encryption option for the integration file. For example, if I am going to use this business process and I need to add the document delivery, so I can go to edit definition. Say this is my step B. I need to add another step, so I can add the step C and say service and say document delivery or document retrieval, or if I need to fire another integration, it's an outward secure credit card service outbound or orchestration of service or step for a placeholder service. Say I want to configure document delivery. And this is not optional. I press OK. So it'll give me an error in which it is asking me that I need to configure my document delivery. So I click on the configure document delivery. Then it'll ask me for, say, from this integration process, say I'm going to use an existing transport, say SFTP. Then it'll automatically pull all the information for the SFTP that I have selected up here. So again, the SFTP address, directory, block size, authentication method, user ID, and the passwords are already saved. And if I need to add an other delivery method, say I want to deliver it to two different locations like SFTP and say another one. Oh, it's not letting me do that. Okay, I think because of some restrictions in the tenant or the integration, it's not letting me add, and it is letting me add, but it's not allowing me to configure this. I'm just going to go ahead and remove it and say press OK. And here we can see that the error has gone, and we have set up our step C as well. Say if I want to add another step in here, stay step B2, and say I want approval. say benefits integration administrator. Let's say due date is say, 1 day, and due date is based on effective, and I don't want to make it optional. And if I want all the members to approve, I can select all, or I can say that anyone from this group, from the security group, any one of the three, if they approve, this business process will move to the next step. Say I press OK. And here you can see that approval step has been inserted. And similarly, in any other business process, if I have any conditions, I can do the maintenance step conditions as well, and add conditions bed for this particular route to fire. So because other people are using the tenant, so let me remove these steps so it doesn't mess up their configurations. Right. So this is how we configure the delivery service. Then if you're retrieving document, similarly, you can configure the business process, and then you can set up the details for the document retrieval. Say again, edit business process. Step C, I set up a service. Say document retrieval. I press OK. Here it'll give me the error again to configure this. And it'll give me all the details of where I am going to be receiving the file. So it's a file name, pattern, or a sequence generator, group manually attached file, or retrieve from external locations. And say I need to receive the file from, say, SFTP. Then, or I could use the content type, say SFTP local host. Oh, it should be SFTP, not FTTP. Say if I want to use temporary files, if there's any host key finger method, say SSH authentication or user ID password, say TSD, test1, test1. Let's say if I want to delete after file retrieval, if I want to decompress, if there's any encryption that I need to decrypt, and if it's selected for a particular tenant like sales or production or sandbox, I can select it, or if I don't select it, then it will be available everywhere, and I press OK. Okay, retention policy, say 30 days, and say file name pattern abcd.xml. And now we have done our document retrieval methodology as well through our integration. So let me remove the step from here so it doesn't affect other users within the tenant. Because we are working with the default definition, so it will be applicable to all the integrations. Another option, when you have set up the integration, you have the option to do the test transport. So it is like Testing your SFTP, whether the connectivity is there, the authentication username password is working, and you are good to send your files. So for example, integration details, integration system. Here I have the option when I am running the integration to integration and launch, or I can do test transport. Right, so it'll give me the transport mechanism for my integration. And then I have a couple of options. Do I just want to establish the connection and test? Do I want to list the file from the SFTP host as to what files are listed there and give me a snapshot? Or if I want to deliver a file, say a file size, use a default test file, block size is 32K, and send it to the local host. Say, for example, I press OK. And it will test a transport mechanism for my integration and give me an output here on this page. So I can test, connect, list files, or deliver files. And this will help us troubleshoot any of the issues that we may observe before we fire the integration to see that if our transportation is working correctly. So because the local host is inaccessible, it is not available, it's just for demo. So it is saying failed to authenticate with localhost with user. Please refer to the SFTP concept in the Workday documentation, and then it'll give you the details of all that failure. Otherwise, it will just say, okay, file delivered successfully. So if it's delivered successfully, then you are satisfied that, okay, my integration transport is working correctly. So use the test transport to task the configured delivery service or retrieval system for an integration system to verify and troubleshoot connectivity to the external endpoint. So when testing your integration system's configured transport, you can either use a 10 KB test file or select a file from your previous integration event. So you have a couple of options as we discussed. So test transport is navigate to integration, launch, and then except for launching the integration, you can do the test transport as a related actions to the integration system. Select the transport to test, and then one of the following actions will be available. So connect is just to see username, password, authentication. It's connecting, it'll say success. If there are any files on your SFTP server that you would like to see the list of, you can click list files, or if you want to deliver a file, you can select deliver files, and then you can select either the default template or select your own file to be delivered. Right. So we have created the integration business process. We've enabled the file name sequence generator. No, we have not done that. So let me show you how we can do that as well. So for example, in order to set up a integration, so details process integration system, let's open this one as well. And here you can see that the core connector outbound file name sequence generator service is enabled. So if it is not enabled, we can go to the integration system. And then first we have to look at the configure integration services. When we open this up, we'll have a list of all the services available for the integration. And by default, the file name sequence generator is optional, but it is not enabled. So you have to enable it first. So select enable. So once you enable this, you'll see it here that it is enabled. And the next step would be to again go to the integration system and configure integration sequence file generator or sequence generator. Here we can see the generator name is or connector underscore outbound underscore 269 underscore, I think it's year, month, date dot XML. And here we can set up the sequence generator. So every time the integration runs, it will use the sequence generator to insert the sequence or create a sequence for your file name. And here you can set up the sequence values. So what do you want to increment the sequence ID by? Say 1. If you want to add any padding to your sequence generator or your sequence format, you can add that as well. Here is your sequence ID format. And then you have other options available. And this is telling you the last sequence ID used and when was it used, on 28th of September 2021. Now, in the sequence ID format, you have to give it the full file name, including the extension. If you don't give the extension, then the file will not have an extension in it. And say, for example, I want to change this, say, to ZT underscore, say, or con underscore, say, out/bound. I can only use a slash here. Say OB. And if I hover my mouse, I'll see all the values that are available. So every set of value will be in the square brackets. So first is the SEQ, which is the next sequence number, then underscore, say year, month, date. So lowercase year would be 2008 when there are 4 YYYY, or if it's just 2, then it'll just give a 2-year output. So for example, if I say this, YY, and here you can see that it's just giving me 210928 along with my name. Say if I want to have 4, so then it'll give me 20210928. Say I want to have the date first, but the sequence generator or sequence ID in the end. Say underscore. So here you can see that the sequence has moved towards the end, and say I want to have 3 digits already there, so I need a 5-digit padding. So here it'll add 2 zeros and then the 3-digit number, which is the next sequence number. And say I want to increment by, say, 3. So the last one was 269 that was used. And so the next one would be not 270, but it should be 269, 77. Then next one should be 272 if I have set up the sequence ID by 3 digits. But when you hover your mouse on the text, this details will give you a lot of information about how you can set up your sequence generator in terms of week of the year, week in the month, day in the year, day in month, a day of the week in month, day in week, like AM, PM, 24 hours you need, or you need the time in. If you want to put in time, you can put in HH, so hours, minutes, seconds, or even milliseconds as well. And if you can see on the second line in this example, it gives you an example file, say file name or file, bracket open sequence, bracket closed and year, bracket closed and month, bracket closed and day, bracket closed and .csv. So this is the example of a sequence format that you may want to use. You can add underscore, you can add curly brackets, or however you want to set up your sequence ID format or the file name format. So once you press OK, so every time your integration is fired and an output file is generated, it will be using this kind of format for all your output. So now all the output files will be ZT underscore orcon underscore OB, then date is year, month, day underscore padded 00, and then 269.xml, right? So we have tested the transport and we have seen how we launched the integration. Now, every integration uses specific business objects or your data sources or your web services. And the security of those web services or your domains or your data sources needs to be given to the integration user. Generally, an integration administrator would be running the integration, or your payroll partner would be running the integration, or your system itself, or system user is running the integration. So you have to provide security for the business objects, the domain, and the user to be able to create, initiate, and launch and run or schedule an integration. So security for access to integration templates, systems, and events. So Workday provides several security domains that secure your user accounts to integration templates and integration systems. These domains separate the permissions needed to configure an integration from the permissions needed to run an integration template and systems, and then grant access separately for each particular segment. So for example, if I look at these functional areas, say HCM, say let's go to the functional area of advanced compensation. And let me open the business process security policy. And say request stock grants. If I'm running a business process for stock grant, sorry, not the business process, but say domain security policy. And here I can see that who has report and task permissions and who has integration permissions, where you can get and put data. So compensation administrator has access, compensation system has access, and implementers have access. So we have to make sure that the integration permissions are allowed to these people, these security groups, and people who are in the security group, like say these 7 users, which is say Workday support, Workday implementers, Workday configurators, and then the tenant owner, Logan McNeil, Joy Banks, and Don Myers. They have access to the integration systems domain. So only they can run the integrations for compensation management events if there is an integration related to this particular business process security or domain security. So the proper permissions need to be assigned in order for the integration to be fired or to be executed. So not just the domain security, but then who are allowed to run the business process? Who are the users? Like the backend users, for example, say ISU integration system users. Say, so here I can see all the integration system users that are created within this tenant, like Okta Worker Data System, Payroll Interface System, Settlement System, or Adaptive ISSG, Grant System, ISSG API Processing Pending Approval Accruals, and so on. So different back-end users can be created that who are not actual users of Workday, but they are, say, third-party system like Adaptive ISSG would probably be a user who is not part of your Workday population, but they have get input permissions for domain security policy, for setup, adaptive planning, and they are allowed to run this business process, or they have permissions for adaptive planning workforce functional area, workforce action plan event, and say this is a depreciated service, background service, but they have permissions to run this business process, and they have access for this particular domain. So these domains separate the permission needed to configure an integration system from the permissions needed to run an integration template and system, and then grant access separately for each segment. So security for access to integration templates, systems, and events. So following table lists integration related security domains and what permissions are granted for each domains. Like, for example, integration build gives permissions or grants permission to create or edit an integration system. So these domain of areas where you allow the security groups and users will give them these kind of access, like integration configure. So who can configure the integration service or configure an EIB? Integration debug. So who can debug a Workday Studio integration? Integration event. So who can launch an integration and view the resulting integration events, like including output documents. Integration reports. Who can run and view the integration reports, and then integration subscription, like who can view an integration subscription and edit an integration subscriptions. So these are the high-level domains on your left side in which you need to give permissions for these kind of tasks or activities that you would need to give permissions for or give restrictions on. So access to Workday data, all access to Workday data is done through web services operation and report as a service. So when anybody who's accessing from the outside world and would like to access the data from your tenant, so they can have a RAS or a web service through our Workday. For that, they need to have a ISU account or ISSG account, integration services account, with relevant permissions to the domain and the data source or the object itself. These web services operations, report data sources, report field, and custom reports are secured through various security domains. Cloud Connect and Studio integration require an integration system user account for authentication and access to web services tasks. Like we talked about ISU account. So in order for the integration to work correctly, the integration system user security group must have put and get access to the domain that contains the web services operation that interacted with necessary data. So if that your integration type is only read-only from Workday and they are not supposed to put any data into Workday, then you can just give them get access. But if you want that integration user to be able to input data into Workday, then you need to give them put access as well, in addition to get. So to create an integration system security group, you can create security group task and select integration system security group. So let's try to make that one. Say create security group. Again, if you recall the discussion about constrained and unconstrained, constrained would be restricted to organization types and unconstrained would have access to all system areas. Say ZT underscore ISU test. Really, why is it giving me all these Chinese information? Somebody has made Workday into Chinese. So this security group is now created. And so to create an integration security group and integration users, I have to add them. Integration system users, say edit, say ISU, say I want to have adaptive ISU and Hill and AP. I select them, and then I can look at the security. Well, what's going on with this? Why is it in Chinese? And this particular menu is in Chinese, which is not, or Japanese, what it is. Can anybody read Chinese or Japanese?
No. No.
Okay. Neither can I. So, well, this is how you create a security group. To create an integration system security group, create the access security group task and select the integration system security group. And then you can add your integration system users. So how do you create an integration system user, you may ask? So the task for that is create integration system user. Come on. So say ZT underscore ISU underscore TEST. Oh, this is Korean. Extension options. Let me add this here. So say new password, test 123, confirm new password, test 123. Generally, I don't want to generate a random password for an integration user because integration users is not somebody, a person who's going to access my tenant. So it's going to be a system. So I usually don't select generate password when I'm setting up the password for the user because I'm going to create this user account and send it to the vendor. Okay, here's a user, here's a password. And the system probably cannot look at the generate because when you have generate random password, it's difficult. And also the enter new password for next login, I would never enable that for a system because the system doesn't know that, after entering the current password, there's no sequence of, creating a new password at the next time they log in. Right. So I don't want to select that. I don't want to select, say, generate random password. And then I can have an option that do I want them to give access to my user interface of Workday or only to the integration systems? So if I select this explicitly, it will not allow this ZT ISU test user to log in into the user interface. It will only be able to access the integration details or integration system files only. So I, as a normal practice, do allow this, but then I will restrict them with all my security policy as to what kind of access they have in the security group. Right. So we have made this user. So copy text, view security group. Say ZT. This was my group. I want to edit this group and say I want to add my ZT account that we just created. So I won't remove this. So with all the permissions that I give to ZT ISU test security group will be usable by these two groups. So let's say I remove that Adaptive ISU as well. And this is how I created a user and add them to the security group. And then each security group will have their own set of permissions. So once the integrations group is created, you may add integration users. Multiple integration system users can be associated with the integration system security group after receiving same permissions as the other. So you always give permissions for ISU users to the security group, not to the users. Right. So providing permissions to your security group. So Workday Connected Integration uses underlying web services operation. The web service operation for get data from Workday that is included in the outbound integration and put data received from inbound integration into Workday. So verify that the security group used by the application system user account has put and get access to the domains where the web service tasks are secured. So remember I talked about each and every object and data source is secured by domain security policy and business process security policies in each functional domain. So whichever domains your target integration system is either trying to get the data from or put the data in, each domain security policy and business process security policy, especially domain security policy, would need to be given permissions for this particular security group for this particular integration. Like we discussed a few minutes ago in the functional areas, domain security policies. So for custom integrations, your developer can provide you a list of web services tasks used by the integration. So they can provide you the list that, okay, you need to give this user permissions in these different domains. So we have created the integration system user, the system group. We have identified the required permissions, provided permission to the underlying web service operation, going to the functional area, domain security policy, and then adding the users into that. Then provide permissions to the required domains. You always activate your security policy changes after you make changes to domain security or business process security. Verify permissions, associate the integration system to the user, and then launch the integration system.